You know, it's kind of amazing when you think about it. Gambling goes way back, like ancient Rome, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And now we have this huge, complex system of global rules trying to manage it all.
It's a massive undertaking.
So today, we're diving into one specific part of that, how governments are trying to, well, bring in more revenue through better compliance and monitoring in gambling.
Mm-hmm. Though it's not just about the cash, is it? I mean, that's definitely part of it.
Sure.
But governments regulate to handle the downsides, too.
Mm.
Addiction, fraud, making sure games are fair. There's always this balancing act.
Balancing revenue goals with, I guess, the burden on the operators.
Exactly. And the cost of actually doing the regulation.
Right. And you see so many ways they tackle it. Total government control, more open licensing.
All sorts of models.
What our sources seem to show is this constant effort to find that sweet spot. Get the income, but also push responsible gambling.
Yeah, that's the core tension.
So let's dig into that. We'll look at the principles behind it, why monitoring is so key, how tech fits in, and what actually works for enforcement.
Sounds good. So, starting with the basics.
Yeah.
What is responsible gambling regulation?
Good question.
It's not just about stopping people losing money. It's more about creating a sustainable environment. People can enjoy it, the industry is legit, and harm and crime are kept down.
And there's a definite ethical side, isn't there? Protecting vulnerable people, making sure choices are informed.
Absolutely. Informed consent is huge.
Our sources highlighted some key things here, like honest public info campaigns, not just hyping the jackpot.
Exactly. Truthful information and practical tools are vital, too. Things like self-exclusion schemes where people can opt out.
Player limits, maybe?
Player limits, definitely.
Yeah.
And getting mental health services involved is really important.
Even advertising needs to be careful, right? Focus on fun, not just winning.
Yeah, responsible advertising is key. Focus on entertainment value.
What jumped out at me were the core principles. Fairness, transparency, proportionality, making sure rules aren't too heavy-handed.
Responsibility, reliability.
And consistency seemed like the big one.
Consistency really underpins it all. Think about it. If the rules keep changing or aren't applied evenly, it creates chaos, uncertainty.
Which helps nobody.
Right. The UK is often mentioned as having quite a clear agenda, bringing together the regulator, the industry, NGOs, all focused on responsible gambling.
Okay, so you have the principles, the rules, but how do you make sure operators actually, follow them?
That's where compliance and monitoring kick in. A lot of regulation works by setting specific requirements for operators.
Like financial stuff, KYC, AML.
Precisely. Financial stability, know your customer, anti-money laundering, advertising standards. The list goes on.
So compliance is about making sure they do those things.
Yes, setting the expected behavior.
Yeah.
And then you need enforcement penalties, basically, if they don't comply.
And monitoring, how does that fit?
Monitoring is like the eyes and ears. It spots potential harm, it tells regulators if the rules are actually effective, and it gives feedback for improvement. It's that crucial loop.
Makes sense. Now, technology. It's changing everything, isn't it? How are AI and blockchain shaking things up here?
Oh, hugely. This is a really dynamic area. New tech offers, well, potentially much more transparency and accountability.
How so?
Take AI and machine learning. They can crunch vast amounts of data to spot patterns, predict risks, flag weird activity that might signal non-compliance or financial crime.
Like money laundering.
Exactly. It can help reduce false alarms, too. And there's this thing called subtext supervisory technology, basically automating compliance checks.
Sounds super efficient. Any catches?
Well, yeah. AI learns from data, right?
Yeah.
If the data's biased, the AI can inherit that bias. So you always need human oversight. You can't just let the machine run wild.
Okay. What about blockchain?
But blockchain's different. Think immutable ledgers, shared unchangeable records of transactions.
So more trust.
Potentially, yes. Trust in the operations. Maybe real-time oversight for regulators in a decentralized way. And smart contracts could automate things, like ensuring random number generators are truly random.
Could that cut down on disputes, help internationally?
That's the hope. The big challenge, though, is plugging these new techs into existing systems smoothly. And you don't want to make your jurisdiction unattractive to good operators because the tech is too cumbersome or expensive.
Right, another balancing act. Okay, so putting tech aside for a moment, what are the effective, practical ways regulators monitor and enforce things now?
Well, being targeted is smart. You can't watch everyone equally all the time. So focus resources where the risk seems highest.
Makes sense.
Partnerships are also really valuable. Regulators working with law enforcement, sharing intelligence.
And risk-based approaches, you mentioned risk.
Yeah, that's becoming standard.
Right.
Assess the risk level of different operators, maybe based on their size, products, customer base, and tailor the scrutiny. High-risk operators get more attention,
More inspections.
more inspections, deeper dives into their controls. Regular checks are fundamental anyway. And cooperative models are gaining traction too. Government, regulators, industry working together. Co-regulation.
Even involving the public sometime.
Yeah, public compliance monitoring. It can save resources and offer an independent viewpoint.
It sounds like collaboration between the rulemakers and the industry is pretty central. Not just catching bad guys, but building a culture of wanting to comply.
That's it, exactly. Regular dialogue, getting industry expertise when drafting rules, reviewing them together. It builds buy-in.
Fosters that culture of compliance you mentioned.
Right. When the industry feels involved and the rules seem fair and practical, they're more likely to follow them properly.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the how of regulation and compliance, but let's link it back to the start. How does this actually affect government revenue? Does being strict help or hurt the bottom line?
It's interesting because you might think tighter rules mean less revenue, but often the opposite seems true, at least in the long run.
Really?
Well, responsible gaming systems built on solid compliance build trust, trust in the operator, trust in the fairness of the games.
And people are more likely to play if they trust the system.
Exactly. Preventing fraud, protecting players that builds confidence. Our sources mentioned examples like compliant operators in Belgium and Luxembourg seeing really good growth, better than the market average.
So doing the right thing can actually be good for business.
It seems so. Plus, think about the illegal market. Huge sums bet illegally, zero tax revenue. Effective regulation pulls players towards the legal tax market.
That's a clear win for state revenue.
Definitely. And a well-regulated industry can be a plus in other ways, attracting tourism, creating jobs, boosting investor confidence because it's stable and ethical.
Transparent rules might even lower compliance costs for operators eventually, make things more competitive.
That's the idea. Less ambiguity, clear expectations. And there's evidence that good, responsible gambling strategies actually reduce problem gambling rates over time, which is a societal benefit, obviously, but also helps sustain the industry.
Sounds like a win-win, but it can't be that simple. What are the big challenges in actually implementing this effectively, especially across borders?
Oh, there are definitely hurdles. A major one is just the patchwork of rules globally. Different countries have different levels of strictness, different focuses. Makes consistent monitoring really hard for operators working internationally.
And for regulators trying to cooperate.
Absolutely. International cooperation is crucial. Trying to find common ground, maybe through bodies like the International Gambling Network, but it's tough.
What else? Resources.
Resources are always a big one. How much money, staff, expertise do regulatory agencies actually have? They have to make choices about where to focus.
And that impacts how well they can monitor everything.
For sure. And you need sustained funding. These aren't quick fixes. Investing in compliance, tech, and expertise takes time and commitment, often longer than political cycles.
Keeping up with the technology must be a challenge, too.
Constant challenge. Requires ongoing training, investment, and making sure the tech investments actually deliver value for money against the policy goals.
Okay, looking forward then. What are the big trends we should watch out for in gambling compliance and monitoring?
I think we'll see a continued shift towards being more proactive, definitely more data-driven. Predictive analytics is a big buzzword.
Using data to spot problems before they happen.
Yeah, or at least earlier. Using machine learning and other techniques to assess risks, monitor trends, see if regulations are working. Needs good analysts. Ethical frameworks, though.
Right, the bias issue again.
Always need to be mindful of that. We'll also likely see regulators needing to be more adaptable, quicker to respond to new products or risks.
And more international collaboration.
It has to happen, especially with online gambling being so borderless. Coordinated efforts on consumer protection, tax, problem gambling, it's essential. And we'll keep seeing more advanced monitoring tools being developed and adopted.
This has been really fascinating. It paints a picture of a constant, evolving effort to get this balance right: revenue, responsibility, fairness.
It really is. And strong compliance and monitoring, embracing tech wisely, working together internationally, these seem like the absolute must-haves for a sustainable, ethical gambling sector going forward.
Definitely. So maybe the final thought for our listeners. Considering how fast tech is moving and how global this market is becoming,
Hmm.
what's actually going to be the single biggest hurdle for regulators in the next, say, 10 years? Trying to keep up effective oversight while still hitting those revenue targets and protecting players. Something to think about.
A very relevant question.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.